conocido, pero él fue conocido por pertenecer a este grupo de guerrilla urbana que hubo en el Ecuador en los tempranos 80, que se llamaba Alfaro Vive el Carajo. Pero claro, él era una persona
Javier,
con inquietudes intelectuales, entonces escribía poesía.
Disculpa, sorry to interrupt. We are live now in the Facebook Live of the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival. Thank you all for joining us. On behalf of the festival, thanks, Javier, to joining us for this second conversation that we're having every day at noon with the directors of the New Directors Competition. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival takes place in the Coast Salish territories of the indigenous in the indigenous territories and traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We would also like to thank our funders, Canada Council for the Arts, British Columbia Arts Council, City of Vancouver, and SFU Woodward. Javier is the director of PANAMA. PANAMA screened yesterday at Cinematheque. A third of the capacity, Javier, we had yesterday. So 43 people watch your film in the biggest screen. So we're very proud and happy. We're the first hybrid festival in Vancouver, and I'm very happy for it. I let the floor open because I know there are a lot of questions with the youth jury in this stylish film from Ecuador. If you haven't seen it, it's still online all across Canada until September 6th. I'd like to thank Javier for bringing a film from Ecuador. We show films from Sebastián Cordero in the past. Ecuador is a small country, so they don't have a lot of production of cinema. We also show Alba last year, but every time we have a film from Ecuador, it's a really interesting film, and we really appreciate having you, Javier. You are in the competition of new directors. You're almost done make it. You have a documentary before a feature film. This is your first narrative film, because this section is for documentaries and narrative films, as you saw in the selection. So you are a very experienced director, as people see this very technically very extraordinary film. Please, if you have your questions, raise your hand, chicos. I'm seeing Lalo. Adelante, go ahead.
Hello. Well, I enjoyed a lot the movie, and as my first thoughts were like, well, this is an old situated movie, like in the 80s and that stuff, but it really talks about topics that never get old, or that are always with the human conditions, like this social like contrasts between you know, this left-wing idealist and the other one which is more dreamy, and at the end of the film I was like really reflexive and with a lot of questions. But I think, do you think that the cinema should just point out what's wrong, or to ask questions, or do you think that cinema also can show us like one way to follow? Because at the end I thought, okay, yeah, this is wrong and it's still happening. There are a lot of things that, as in Ecuador, also happen in Mexico. We also have our history with guerrillas and terrorism, and those things still happen. So what do you think? Do you think that cinema is also like a window that we should like be like we should follow there some path, or just watch through that window the things that are happening that we not see? Do I make myself clear?
Yes, it's an interesting question. Of course, I think film should be more like a window, like you said, to see different, in this case, different lifestyle options. My interest with this film was not to choose a side, you know. I didn't want to. It was not my interest to pick one of the two characters over the other, even though a lot of people have seen the film in that lens, from that political perspective. But my main idea was to show that both characters that had taken completely different paths were equally trapped. That was my idea. I don't know if it worked.
Yeah, it worked. I felt also trapped.
Any other question? I can see the whole people. I'm very. Anybody raise your hands, please? You have a question? Thomas.
Hello. Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say I really loved the movie. I thought it was just incredible. Um, and you talked a bit about just like the idea that there isn't really a wrong or right. It's a very morally gray film. And what's interesting to me is that the film was shot in black and white, but of course, when you shoot anything in black and white, you're bound to get a lot of grays. Was this cinematography, was this an intentional choice to reflect the moral grayness of the film?
Yeah, well, maybe Tomas later can explain us more about the how the black and white worked. But I think it was our choice from the beginning, from when we started writing the film and everything, because like you said, it's a film about contrasts, you could say. So black and white is basically contrast, and it also helped to situate the not the period, but because it wasn't the idea to do like a perfectly how do you call it, ambientated. I'm gonna get better with my English as I keep talking, but the idea was mainly to in Spanish the word is extrañeza, the strangeness of a different time. You know, more than showing that time exactly or precisely, describing a different time, which is always kind of difficult. The idea was to show the strangeness. I don't know if it's the right word of a different time from ours. To have that, you know, to have that. Distance, and I thought black and white helped, and also to focus on the dialogues. Sometimes black and white films can help you concentrate on some things more than others.
Yeah, because like oftentimes when films are shot in like black and white, you mentioned about shooting films, to bring up the past. Oftentimes it feels like black and white or other approaches to film. They're used to sort of summon a sense of nostalgia in the audience. But I really liked what you did with the idea of making films set in the past and using black and white, not to make things feel nostalgic or rosy or whatever, actually very uh morally sort of dubious and at times kind of uncomfortable.
Yes, what you were saying right now made me think of one of the main influences of this film, which is strangely, because it's not very common right now to have that influence, is or maybe yes, is cinema noir. I love that those old films from the 30s and 40s, which are also, it's not only because of the black and white, but also I think and some of the aspects of the suspense that may be present in the movie, but also because of its way of form of production, because cinema noir was a very low budget film moment. It was there was a very big crisis in the world in between, I think it was between the two world wars, and these films were made with practically nothing. So in that sense, it's also similar, because Panama is a film that was made with a very low budget in a very small time frame, which is a week, which is not very common for feature films. So yeah, what you said kind of reminded me of that atmosphere of the cinema noir, which I love.
Yeah, thanks for
sorry,
no, you go ahead. I just
yeah,
well, I just wanted to say thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
And then we have Aiden, and then Melissa can go right ahead after.
So I really enjoyed the film. And I found something interesting watching it, which is that in every scene you used, well, there was some exceptions, but for the most part, very, very, very few shots. It was a wide shot and a close up on either of the leads. And it was very rigid in the structure. And in a way, it kind of allowed the film to be dynamic through solely its dialogue. But I'm curious, when you were presumably storyboarding or just going about filming, how did you make the decision that the shot structure of the film would be so clear cut and rigid?
Well, I think all these questions can be answered more by Tomas, maybe, from the photography, not only the production, but the photography. Why? I think it's very related also, both aspects. So maybe, Tomas, you can tell us.
Well,
and Tomas, if you need a oh no.
It's fine. It's fine. I think it's fine. Let's see. Yes, I think it's all the decisions concerning the decoupage of the movie and the cinematography is related with the production, because as Javier explained before, we shot the film in only 6 days. It was a big crew. We had 30 people in the crew. We shot with 2 cameras, but it was a kind of race against time. So we really did the choices looking for the concentration with the actors and the dialogues, because we knew that the dialogues are the most important element in this film, and the acting, right, of all the actors that appear in the film. So we didn't try to make a kind of a show off, or with movements and dollies or travelings, and we wanted to be very kind of classical in that sense. Is why we had this kind of wide shot and then the close-ups, right? Because when you do when you're making a film with a very low budget, you need to do several choices and to be very specific. And I think that was the main challenge for us. And yeah, I think we shot the film like a kind of documentary, almost to be like observers of this situation. It's like in the main scene, in this restaurant scene, the camera is maybe in the other table in the restaurant. When you are in a restaurant and you can see in the table that is close to the next table close to you is like, okay, you can see 2 people there talking, right? And yeah, that's why we chose this kind of decoupage, and we did these choices in cinematography. And I think it's very related, this the black and white and the economy of shots.
Gracias, Tomás. Melissa, adelante.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I had a question that was actually related to production, but you kind of already answered it. But I was wondering, what was the process of being both a photographer and the producer? Like, how much do you let one role influence the other in terms of decision making? And also, this is for Javier. We learned that this is a real story, and what happened with Alfredo Vives is a really interesting thing that happened. So when do you get to the point of deciding, I'm going to tell this story by portraying a conversation instead of going the typical way of just doing a biopic about the events that happened and doing this other thing? Thank you.
Should I? Yeah, I can start. Yes, it was very, very tough in that sense to be a producer and and DOP of the film. But so what I did, it was like during the shooting, I completely forget the production. I mean, I had a production manager, a very, very good production manager. So I really I was concentrated in the photography, and also the photography was done by me and by Maria Gracia Goya. I think she has a couple of films in the festival now, a cinematographer. So she's a great DOP, and it was very nice to collaborate with her because I was not like alone. So I uh, I think cinema is very collaborative work, and in production you are not alone, and in cinematography you are not alone. So I think that is the good way for us to create movies, working with other people, because you as a one man filmmaker is very, very tough to work. So yeah, that's the answer.
And yes, and regarding the whole Alfaro Vive thing, yes, I was very interested in talking about that that period, because it hadn't been it was a little bit later than other left wing guerrilla movements in Latin America, which started in the 60s and the 70s especially. So this was a later movement, Alfaro Vive, which happened in the beginning of the 80s, and was kind of short-lived, because these people met a great repression from the state, from the, in that moment, a democratic government. It wasn't even the normal military dictatorship atmosphere that repressed these people, but a democratic government. So and there was a lot of repression, and these people were basically young people like you, and very idealistic, and they chose that struggle through the arms, which I don't think is the best way, especially now. It has been proved that it is not the best way at all. But they chose it kind of as an election they made that decision in because of the great injustices that existed in the country in that time, and that still exist in all our countries in one way or another, although things have obviously changed at the same time. But right now, I think it's getting worse. So that just kind of to explain my interest in these people. But yes, obviously, I didn't choose to tell the whole story of Alfaro Vive. That is very hard. And there are a couple of documentaries, very interesting documentaries, that show a wider story, But I was very interested in this character, Juan Carlos Acosta, which he wasn't very common in that organization, because he was a guy that came from the elite, from the upper class in Quito, and he chose to get in that struggle in a very, how could you explain it, in a very coherent style. And he was one of the main organizers of this kidnapping of the banker. When Alfaro Vive they were desperate, because they had lost a lot of their members that had been killed. So they did this very big action, trying to get money, basically, So they were criminals at the end, But they did this this big kidnapping of the banker, and Juan Carlos Acosta, who paradoxically came from this background, was the main organizer of the kidnapper. So So that's kind of the backdrop of the story, and I chose to tell obviously not the kidnapping. That would be another movie, maybe a good one also, an action movie probably. The whole kidnapping, which is terrible. It lasted a lot of weeks, and everything went wrong, and everyone died. Even the kidnapped, even the banker died. So that's another film that someone could make. But I was more interested. I was more interested in this life story, and I remember this anecdote that I had heard when I was young, when I was in the university and was interested in these political subjects. Someone told me this anecdote of a real life encounter in Panama City between Juan Carlos Acosta and a friend from high school. The friend from high school is the person who told me about this story, who told me this story, because Juan Carlos Acosta was dead at that time. So it's basically, it comes from that anecdote of this real encounter, chance encounter in a foreign city between two friends that had shared the same school and everything, upbringing, and had taken completely different paths and met in this foreign city and talked. In real life, the encounter probably lasted a couple of hours, but here it's 24 hours. And but yeah, in real life, the friend also in that moment didn't know what Juan Carlos was doing. Juan Carlos lied to him. Juan Carlos told him that he was working in an international organization type, United Nations or something like that, but the friend found out a couple of months or a couple of years later, when he saw the news and this guy died in the kidnapping. He found out what he was really in. So sorry if I took so long, but that's the story.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Anybody, take the floor, whoever. Valentina, and then Pedro Pablo, and then Cristian Mejia after Cristian. Dale, Valentina.
Hola, I have a question from Carla Asensio, who is here in the conversation, but her mic is not working. So the question goes, how was the transition for you from working documentary to making your first fiction film?
Well, the film before was a fake documentary. So in a sense, I already had a foot in fiction, But I think they're basically the same thing. In many senses. A documentary and a feature film can be very alike in the sense of telling a story, and that's the thing that has always attracted me, the storytelling. So I come from the documentary. The first things I did were in the documentary, and I love the documentary genre. And I knew that when I so that's probably why Panama is also such a concise film, because I don't consider myself to be a very how could you say, a very visually complex director, because that style of movie making requires a lot of money. So since I come from the documentary, I've been used to doing films with not much money. So that's and I think that's more interesting in a sense that there are a lot of films that are made with too much money, especially in Latin America and in Ecuador. There have been a lot of very big films that don't necessarily tell a good story. So I was interested in doing that the other way around, telling a good story without resources. So yeah, I guess you can say that it's a documentary style film in its simpleness. In its, not to say that documentary films are simple, but something like that. Yeah.
Just before Pablo asks the next question, as you remember, you see the festival. It's a hybrid festival in the terms Javier has made documentaries and narrative films. The selection of some film of the festival has documentaries, has Fendas, for example, that is screening tonight, is a Brazilian film that it's a hybrid as well. So that's also part of the essence of the festival competition. So the next question, please go ahead.
I'll just go ahead. Hi, Javier. Hi, everybody. My name is Christian. I'm part of the board of directors here at the Vancouver Latin American Film Fund. It's so great to have this conversation. Thank you, everybody. I wanted to direct my question to Javier and ask how come and how did you come up with deciding not to give more context to the story? Because and also I want to talk about a bit of the ending, because Alfaro Vive Carajo and all of the guerrilla and the situation that we've lived in Ecuador, I am from Ecuador, so I'm very close to the story. I was really able to enjoy it and understand it. But then when it travels, and other people in the cinema yesterday, they were lacking a bit of context and understanding to what this is. So my question, I think, is, do you feel that it's valuable, maybe at the ending, to give more context, or at a certain point of the film to give more context of the situation? Or is it on purpose desire to leave the audience with that doubt? Because here in Canada, everybody's like, oh, I got to go research what happened, because now I don't know what happened. So I thought that the movie was great. I really loved the technique. And at the end, I would have liked a bit more, so you can wrap it up on a way that we make sure, or you make sure, you guys as producers, directors, that the movie is understood all around the world.
Yes, I understand your question. I think it's interesting because obviously it's very different showing a film in your country. For example, this film, which had which was premiered at the beginning of the year in Ecuador, in Quito, especially, and showing it in other places. Obviously, the reception changes. I guess I wanted some of the context to come out in this long conversation. I thought that maybe that would happen, but obviously I wasn't thinking. Maybe I should think more about that. But I was thinking of doing a film for, I think, for Ecuador. I mean, obviously, every person who does an artistic activity wants his work to be seen in other places as well. I'm not saying that, but I guess what you're saying has to do with maybe with that interest in telling a story for a certain space, you know. So in that sense, sometimes I also thought that it was very local, the film, and I thought maybe it wouldn't work in other parts. That's why it's nice to see that in Vancouver, for example, as in other places, it has happened. People have connected with the film as well, so that's great when that happens. But I mean, it's not the main. I guess it's not the main interest in my work to give like a context for someone who doesn't know anything about the place where the film comes from. You know, I think the film is very connected with or my films are very connected with with the history of Ecuador, and yeah, sometimes I forget that people don't know much about Ecuador.
And I have to say, the film really also talks to Vancouver, to a large Vancouver audience that came to Vancouver as exile, to Latin American audience. The first exiles that came to Vancouver were the first Latin American immigrants. They were the Chileans, and then many Salvadorians during the Civil War. So I think this film is also interesting watching it here in Vancouver in the context with many Latin Americans came to Canada because some of those reasons. I saw the film, I thought the ending was great because you get to relate, even though in my case that I didn't know that specific case. So, and also I don't want to say the end because the film is still available all across Canada until September 6th. Who has a question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
And considering that you were talking about the movie, that the movie doesn't have a lot of context, this is not my question, but I felt when I see it that even if I don't know that case in specific, I can read some behaviors of the people that live here or that live in Latin America related to their political positions. But my question is more like about when I read the first text in the movie that says this film was produced by all the people that work there. I found it like a political statement, and that lets people know that your kind of filmmaking has the collaborative processes as something essential, or at least that was my read about that text in the first place. So I want to know what do you think about film in that way? Because I think in fiction sometimes can be more marked that you have a pyramidal structure or organization to film make. I don't know if my English is working, but
yes. I just the last part I didn't hear well because I had a problem with the connection. But well, the text you mentioned is very specific in the sense that the people that worked in the shooting, most of the technical team of the film. In that moment, we shot the film like I said before, with a very low budget. We did not obtain the funding in Ecuador. Many times film funds are very conservative, so the whole idea of this film was made to shoot in a very economic way, even if they didn't, even if we did not obtain the film funding. So in that moment, we did not have the film funding, and we shot with kind of like with our resources. So the people who worked in the film did not get a salary in that moment. They got a percentage of the film. And this year that we presented the film commercially, all the money that came in was shared with all the people that worked in the film. So they finally received their pay. But at that moment, they worked because they liked the project, basically. And it was 1 week, so it wasn't very complex for people who work in the film or publicity industry to dedicate 1 week to an independent film project. So that text at the beginning of the film is not demagogic in any way. It's very real.
Anybody can interrupt and ask the next question, but I just wanted to ask one question to both Javier and the photographer Diego, right, the producer. Tomas, sorry, about the funding and about work in Ecuador. What do you do as an artist? About your training a little. What was your training? And about what do you do as an artist now in Ecuador with the lack of funding? Because obviously you guys have a lot of experience. The film is an amazing piece. we see you have a lot of work behind. So what do you do in Ecuador, you guys, nowadays? And how is you didn't get the funding. Where do you work? Where do you search for film resources to find the money?
Okay, well, I can begin. In that sense, we're very different with Tomas also, because I did not have like a formal, I did not study film school, but I did a couple of courses in different places, especially in Europe some time ago. But Tomas did do like the whole, has a very solid film education in that sense. He'll tell you later. But no, I mean, in the last 10 years, film in Ecuador has grown a lot because there is film funding. So for many of our projects, we have had, including Panama, we finally did get some funding from the film fund, from the national film funds, which, like in most countries, I don't know how it is in Canada, but in most countries in the world, especially in Europe and Latin America, cinema or film is an activity that is subvencionada,
subsidized
by the state in some sense through these film funds. I don't know how it is in Canada.
In Canada is great, but I'm not. In Canada is great, but I'm not gonna tell you because you're gonna get very jealous.
We're gonna talk about that later. But yeah. In Ecuador, there has been from 10 years until now, there is film funding. But like I said before, many times film funds, like national film funds, can be very conservative in the kind of projects they support. So my projects are always kind of strange in that sense. Before, especially with the mockumentary I made, it was very hard for me to get funding with that project. And I tried it for years, and so in that light, I wrote Panama so that it could be done with basically no film official film funding. But they did finally give us, for post-production, they gave us some funding. And that is what usually happens with my films. They don't give me funding when it's written, but they give me funding when the film is shot and is edited. So that's my part. Maybe Tomas can say something else.
Yes. Although there is a film institute, and there are some funds for film. It's still very tough, and there's lack of funding for cinema in Ecuador, unfortunately, and that's true. And this year is the situation of the political situation here is very fragile. Even the film institute is almost disappearing. So to make films, it takes a long time. It's a very long road to finance the movies. Panama, I was just checking some emails, the production emails from Panama, and I think we started almost 7 years ago, and so it takes a while. And I think that is a situation that is very common in Latin America. So for artists or producers and filmmakers, the only way to survive and to have a kind of style of living is to make different things. So a lot of artists or filmmakers are teachers, are working in universities, or doing different things in film. In my case, I work also in distribution. I'm also a curator for a Latin American film festival here.
Which festival, Tomas?
Was the FLAC, is Latin American Film Festival from the Cinemateca of Ecuador. That actually this year is not really happening. I worked for since 2017 till the last year, not this year, and this year is almost disappearing. And a lot of festivals are disappearing in Ecuador, unfortunately. But yeah, so you're always like all the professions, you are doing different things. Like, okay, during 1 month you can shoot a film, but the next month you are doing a festival, and the next month you are, I don't know, working as cinematographer or camera assistant or whatever. But the idea, what I try to do, because in my personal case, is to stay in the cinema background, right? Because yeah, a lot of people needs to work in publicity, in commercials, and this is kind of tough, and or other people leave the cinema a lot. Some people.
Where did you go to school, Thomas? Sorry.
I studied in Belgium in INSAS cinematography, yeah. And the last year I was doing a master degree in cinematography in Europe, in Budapest.
Great. Okay. Anybody go ahead, interrupt.
Me. My question is a little bit similar at the question in the chat, but I noticed during the movie that theater makes a little bit presence, like a part of the background of the characters and the dialogues, I think. My question is, did you decide to make the movie with a more theatrical language, or just happened like that?
Sorry, I did not hear the first part of your question about the dialogues. If they're theatrical,
I noticed, the movie, the theater makes a little bit presence in the movie, like
yes.
part of the backgrounds of the characters and dialogues.
Yes, theater is present because in the story, because well, I did theater when I was in school, and I liked it a lot, and so I thought it was an interesting idea to have both characters that both characters shared that experience in their youth, because I remember theater was very fun in those times, theater groups and exercises and everything. So I wanted to include something of that experience in the film. So I made them to be these. I had them these two friends have a lot of memories from that time in the theater group in high school. And the interesting thing is that both the actors, they're both professional actors, and they were both they studied together in a theater film school in Quito. So that was fun because they also gave ideas about theatrical exercises, and yeah, it's very present. The idea of the theater of the mask kind of is also present, because they are both kind of wearing masks all the time. So the movie talks about those things, false identities, acting in a certain way. We all act in different ways. So I wanted to talk about that, and theater was a good metaphor for that, for those ideas. Also the film is very. It could be very also close to the theater in the sense of its simplestness, you know. So yeah, I think it's all related in a way.
Thank you, because I can't really see again. Let me see who has raised hands. Patricio, I think, yeah.
So beyond the period or political problems, I have this feeling of melancholy of a lost friendship in all the movie. And I wanted to ask how was the work around that friendship? So you found that friendship when you wanted to talk about those characters, or first you wanted to talk about the friendship, or how does that affect it in your decisions?
Well, yeah, friendship is also another subject that is very present in the film. I guess it has to do with the original story that was this anecdote that I was talking about before, that someone told me a long time ago. and this someone was talking about his friend. So that was very present in that in the original story, because this guy, even though he had the real person is not very similar to the character, is kind of different than the character in the film, because at the end it's a great I mean it's a fiction film in that sense, so it's not completely accurate, you know, the characters. But the original character who plays Esteban, yeah, he's a guy who took a completely different path than Juan Carlos, a much more traditional path and he's a well-known person in Quito. But when he told me that story, he was telling me about the loss of a friend that had been in the complete opposite than he is. But nonetheless, he talked about him as his friend. So I thought that was interesting. That idea was interesting for me, and that's kind of, I think, the essence of the film: how we can sometimes be friends with someone who we don't share anything with. And I remembered a lot of obviously my personal experience. I remember well, I'm not very nostalgic of that of those times, but I remember, you know, the friends you make in high school are some of the most intense friendships you will have probably in later when you grow up. It's not that easy to make new friends, you know. So I wanted to explore that moment in friendship, adolescence, and the bonds that are created in that time are very strong. And even when people take different paths or grow apart, some of that friendship remains, even though the big difference that can exist. I don't know if
I just discovered you can put your hand on the chat as Agustin did. So you have a question, just put your hand there, because it's better for me to change the speaker view, etc. If somebody has a question, we are gonna be closing soon, because I don't want to take a lot of time of Javier, who very nicely came to join us this morning, and Tomas. Okay, nobody put their hand. So anybody has another question?
I don't know how to put my hand.
Okay, sorry, just no. We all are new in this world, but believe me, in 10 years we're gonna be very used to this thing. Go ahead.
Also, Lalo wanted to ask a question.
You were talking about the film was written to being made with a low budget, and if the Ecuador film making were more easy or more budget accessible, do you think that the way of telling that story will change a lot, or it will be kept like a simple production mode, but with some things, I don't know how to say it, like hubiera un poco más de presupuesto en ciertas cosas precisas, or will you make another script of that story?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, we all would want to make to have bigger budgets for our films, but I'm after this experience, especially Panama and other documentaries, I'm really interested in doing things with not necessarily huge budgets. I think it's an interesting reto. What would be the word in English?
Challenge.
Interesting challenge to do something with not a lot of resources, especially because what I said before, I sometimes I really don't like it when I see very costly films, because cinema is very expensive. So most films cost a lot of money, but many times, especially in Ecuador and Latin America, I see very big films that don't necessarily tell a good story. So I'm interested in telling a story with not that many resources. I think it's more interesting. Yeah.
I find it interesting because sometimes happens that you write something and then you adapt to that budget that always is less money than the money you need. And I think it's a good exercise and a good way of approach a story, like making it with nothing and then start adding if you have the opportunity. It's like an exercise to take advantage of what it can be a disadvantage, like change
Exactly.
the game.
Exactly, and it's nothing new. It has been done in the a lot of times in the history of film. Right now, while you were talking, I remember Dogma, that movement from I
Dogma
think it
no
was
huh?
Denmark, right? These people that started doing films with kind of like these rules, you know. I remember there was like no interior illumination. Everything had to be naturally illuminated and things like that. So I think it's something that has always been part of since film and cinema has always had this kind of industrial side of it, and this huge economic possibility, especially in big and rich countries like the United States mainly. There has always been this debate between a big and expensive cinema and a more independent and sometimes freer cinema as well.
I think we can do one more question, sorry, with Luis, and after that we're gonna end and to thank Javier again. Luis, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Javier, for being here. I really enjoyed your movie. Well, before we were talking about maybe like the economy of the shots that are in the movie, and also what really stood out to me was like the precision of the dialogues, and I think they were very well very well written. And I wanted to ask you if in that economy and in that position, did that give you a way, or in some sense, like any freedom, like with the actors or with some kind of character development? And what was your process with the actors in developing these quite complex characters?
Great question. Yeah, first of all, it's important to say that that I wrote the film, the screenplay with my brother, who is a writer and who lived in Vancouver for many years. He studied his master's degree in Vancouver, so he was very happy when I told him that the film was. He had told me about the Vancouver Film Festival. He always went, so I was very happy when the Vancouver Film Festival selected the film, because I had a lot of stories from my brother, and so I wrote the screenplay with him, as I've done with other films, and he's a great writer, so it was an interesting process. But then obviously the screenplay is rewritten in a sense by the actors, you know, especially in a film like this that has so much dialogue. I knew I had to work with, and I always prefer to work with professional actors, because there's a big tendency also in Latin American film to work with what we call natural actors, actores naturales, who are people that don't necessarily have a training, but are very charismatic and histrionic, you could say. But my interest has always been. I mean, I'm very interested in actors, like people as well. I find them to be very interesting as people. I don't understand them sometimes. I enjoy to share with them and to work with them. So in this case, we practiced for some time before we shot the film, like the month before, with these two actors who were also friends between them. They were friends. So it was a very interesting process as well. We practiced, especially the main dialogue in the restaurant was the part that we practiced the most, because we had to shoot it in one day. Well, it was really in one night. But so they also contributed to the story in many ways, with a couple of the main exercise was to kind of prevent them or prevent them from using slang from now, from our times. So that was an interesting experience, because obviously in Latin America most people speak with slang all the time. So one of the first things was to try to eliminate all present day slang from their acting, because also it was impossible with such long dialogues. It was impossible to have them memorize the work, even though obviously they did memorize they did incorporate a lot of the material, but it was very hard to ask them to memorize 90 pages of. So in many moments they also contributed with their wording, you could say, with certain expressions, certain Diego Coral, which is the actor with the character with the mustache, Esteban. He worked like a very Quito accent from that time. So he did that. The other guy had a more neutral accent, So yeah, it's they're very interesting processes always to work with actors. It's very enriching to work with good actors, because they can contribute a lot to the story.
Muchas gracias, Javier. Javier Izquierdo, the director of Panama. Thank you very much for being with us today in this conversation. The same with Tomás Astudillo, photographer and producer. Muchísimas gracias, Tomás, for taking some of your afternoon. I don't know what time is in Quito. I don't even know where you are. Maybe you are not in Quito. Pero muchísimas gracias. And for those who didn't come last night at Cinematheque to see Panama, Panama is available all across Canada until September 6th. Visit our website, vlaf.org. Thanks very much to the youth jury. Our youth jury, Javier and Tomás, are everywhere, many of them in Mexico. They are in many places, Costa Rica, Vancouver. I don't know, I can tell. We are so many. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching in Facebook Live. I'm going to stop the conversation in Facebook Live right now. And thanks very much.